Hey, everybody. I am Rory McDonald from the Detroit Cancer Screening Initiative. Very excited to have all of you tuning in to today's episode here at the podcast. We have Dr. David Sternberg here with us in the studio. Very excited to have you, Dr. Sternberg. Just to kind of start us off, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do here in Metro Detroit, and kind of your role within DCSI.
Thank you, and thank you very much for having me, Rory. So I'm a heart and lung surgeon, but my practice and my specialty is lung cancer. I've been a thoracic surgeon specializing in lung cancer my entire career, and was recruited to Michigan back in 2010 and have been in practice here ever since. And as a surgeon who focuses on cancer, my aim and my objective is to cure lung cancer by removing it whenever it's diagnosed. Whenever possible.
Beautiful. Very good. So just to kind of jump right into this, I one of the things that I hear often is just a lack of knowledge and understanding of really revolving on what cancer even is, specifically lung cancer. With this being your specialty and really your focus in the medical field, can you get into that and explain to us a little bit what is lung cancer? And then also within that, I'm sure you'll get into this, the difference kind of between a nodule versus a cancer. What are the differences between those two too?
Sure. So it is not an understatement to say that what is lung cancer? It is the number one form of cancer death, or the number one cancer killer, both in the United States soil and also in the world. So lung cancer is a form of early untimely death. That is a major cause of early death, both here and all over the world. And it is predominantly caused by smoking. And to be more specific, lung cancer is a genetic injury followed by disorganized cell growth that occurs within the lung that leads cells within the lung to absolutely grow without control or without consideration for other parts of your body until it causes both serious illness and death.
Okay. And to get into that a little bit more too, we hear, at least in the last interview that I had the opportunity to do with Dr. McDonald, he talked a little bit about the difference between what is a nodule and what is cancer. Obviously, cancer, I'm not a doctor, so knowing the differences between the two, and the Detroit Cancer Screening Initiative is catching more than just cancer. They're catching nodules, and you guys are able to track those things and know what it is that's happening and be able to pay attention to it long term as to help people long term. But can you get into that too, kind of the differences between what is a nodule and what is a cancer?
Sure, and I'm happy to, and I'm glad we're not ending with that last statement because it was so dark and bleak. But still, because lung cancer is such a serious health problem, both in the United States and abroad, there have been massive efforts to try to find some way to figure out whether or not people either have or are developing lung cancer early in the disease process when it's much more curable and manageable. And people have been looking for this back in the 50s, really back at the same time that mammography was getting sway. People were already having massive programs of screening for lung cancer. But at that time, they only had x-rays. So they really couldn't see anything. So they would get x-rays and they couldn't detect lung cancer until it was at such an advanced stage that you almost didn't need x-rays to figure out that there was something wrong. And it wasn't until CAT scans came along, really in the 90s, that we started to credibly be able to detect lung cancers in their early phases, if you know what I mean. And the early phase of a lung cancer is typically a lung nodule and then a lung mass. And that's typically how you find a lung cancer. And the analogy I like to use is you like to catch a house fire before it's a house fire when it's just a toaster fire. If you can catch a fire at the toaster fire stage, you just throw away the toaster and you have just lost $60, and it was a $60 problem. But if the toaster fire isn't caught, and then becomes a kitchen fire, and it then becomes a house fire. And that, unfortunately, is when things can no longer be easily managed. So that's the point of detecting nodules and masses. Specifically nodules is really when you want to detect them. You want to detect it at the toaster fire stage, not the house fire.
That is an incredible way to explain it to me. Like I said, somebody who's not in the medical field, and there's so many words and jargon that exists within the medical field. Like your ability to explain that was very good. So hopefully somebody's able to benefit from that. I wanted to get into too the smoking sensation. Can you explain to us too what is that, and how does it also affect and play a role here in Metro Detroit?
Sure. Smoking cessation has been, well, it's been a major initiative really since in 1963. It was, believe it or not, it was Kennedy's Surgeon General who first came out and said that lung cancer is associated with smoking, and that there was a link that smoking caused lung cancer. We weren't the first country to figure that out. As a matter of fact, it's an interesting bit of history to note that the first world leader who discovered the link between smoking cigarettes and lung cancer was Adolf Hitler, actually, who led an anti-smoking campaign during World War II in Germany, which is interesting. But in 1960s, Kennedy and his Surgeon General figured it out, but it's been long and sort of been a slowly moving, if you will, process where we've been educating our public and trying to get people to quit cigarette smoke. Not just because of the cancer that cigarette smoking often causes, but because of all the other diseases. People, sort of sometimes make their peace with getting emphysema, and sometimes they even make their peace with getting lung cancer. But the thing that most smokers don't think about is that cigarette smoking destroys and absolutely ravages your blood vessels. So while they may be emotionally reconciled to the idea of maybe getting a cancer or emphysema, they never thought about the possibility that they could have a massive stroke that could leave them paralyzed. And that most of the time that this happens, it's not happening in your 30s. It's happening in your 60s when people are winding their job careers down and they're looking forward to retiring. But instead of enjoying their retirement, they're paralyzed and often stuck in rehab facilities. They can also have massive heart attacks, aneurysm ruptures. So the list of medical illnesses and diseases that cigarettes cause is truly astronomical.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you got into. I'm not interrupting you, am I?
No, go right ahead.
Okay, so I'm glad that you're getting into that, because my next question, a thing that I wanted to really bring up with you, is revolving around not just the process of the screening that takes place, but some of the wins that we're seeing here in Metro Detroit and hopefully around the United States, of people being able to catch the toaster fire and not the kitchen fire, not the house fire. What kind of wins have you seen for people kind of getting ahead of this and getting screened at the right time and catching it in a spot where it can be treated and it can be taken care of?
It's happening, and it's happening more quickly than everybody thought it would. When you think about how long it took to convince women to get mammograms, mammography, really started to get going in the 50s, but it took a long time before we were able to convince women to go in there and get basically just an annual chest X-ray of their breast. So we really thought that when it came to getting smokers to come in and get a full-on CAT scan of their lungs, that now is covered by insurance, but back then wasn't. We thought there was just no way that smokers were going to come in and get screened, because if they cared so much about lung cancer, they wouldn't be smoking. That was the assumption. But what we're starting to see, even here in the Detroit area, is rapid progress that exceeded a lot of our expectations. For example, if you would have looked at the death rate, the 5-year death rate of people who were diagnosed with lung cancer more 10 years ago, it was about 15% patients survived. 85% of patients would succumb to their cancer within 5 years. But now here we are 10 years later, a little more than 10 years later, and we're looking at numbers in the 23% range. So we're already starting to see major differences, that are climbing and getting better and better every passing month in the survivability of lung cancer that had not existed before.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And it's good to hear statistics that are real and honest when it comes to how we in Metro Detroit are getting ahead of this, which is really good. One of the things that when I was talking to Dr. McDonald in the last interview too, revolved around smoking. And one of the things that he said was, hey, it's not your fault. We know how difficult it is. We're not hitting you over the head with a hammer. You, somebody who is a smoker, we understand how difficult this is to stop. We do see the benefit. We are telling you to stop, but what kind of tools exist out there, or options that somebody might have? I'm kind of going off the cuff here with this question, but I just see smoking as such a huge thing here in Metro Detroit. It's been around for a long time. It's everywhere. What kind of things for somebody who's out there who's like, yeah, you know what? I've been hearing this for a while now. I heard it from my doctor. I'm hearing it from my kids. I'm hearing it from my wife. I'm hearing it from my cousin. I need to stop this. I need tools though. Do you have any suggestions for somebody out there who might be in that position, who wants to stop, but just needs the resources in order to do so?
I have a million suggestions. There's never been a better time to quit smoking. And it's not nearly as hard as it was, my parents' generation, when they just had to go cold turkey. You still can go cold turkey. And it's probably one of the best ways to do it if you're strong enough to get it done. But there has never been a time when we had more products on the market to help smokers quit. For example, there are lots of different nicotine products out there that will help you get the craving of nicotine while you stay away from cigarettes. And there is good evidence that there is something about burning cigarettes, burning the tobacco leaf and smoking it, that is significantly worse than just getting nicotine. Now, nicotine is the addictive component in cigarettes. And while nicotine is in and of itself something of a carcinogen or a cancer-causing agent, it's really not just a nicotine that kills our patients. It's all the other tars and all the other poisons that come along with smoking cigarettes. So what we try to do sometimes as an intermediate step are give patients the nicotine they crave, but get them off of the cigarettes that's killing them. So to kind of organize this conversation a little bit, if you want to quit smoking, there are lots of products that will give you the nicotine, but without all the other terrible things within cigarettes. And you can have that nicotine a number of different ways. You can chew that nicotine in the form of nicotine gum, and that's been around for a long time. You can get patches on your skin that will actually give you low-dose constant nicotine across your skin. And although we don't like to recommend vaping as a form of quitting cigarettes, it has been done successfully. You can also inhale it. There have also been inhaled forms of nicotine, Nicotril and others that have been on the market for a long time that actually allow patients who smoke to maybe get inhaled forms of nicotine that get into the bloodstream. So there are a variety of nicotine replacement strategies that avoid cigarettes that have been hugely successful. And then there are also certain varieties of antidepressants that also help curb the urge to smoke cigarettes. And that's a completely different class of medication that has not been on the market as long. So, for that reason, it's a good time to quit because you have a lot of help.
That's awesome. So for anybody out there who's hearing this interview, listening to it maybe on Spotify or anything out of the other systems that we're on, and you have more questions, or you're interested in knowing what my next step is in terms of being screened, maybe you've already talked to your primary care doctor and they've said to look for a screening area. I don't know what that might be, but go to our website, www.detroitcancerscreen.com, where you can get a lot more information there, as well as have some of the contacts for you to be able to ask more questions, like the awesome Dr. David Sternberg, who we have on the podcast today. Dr. Sternberg, I'm very thankful for you taking the time out of your busy day to be a part of this and really spread the information that Metro Detroit and honestly the world, like you said, needs to hear in order for us to prevent and hopefully get rid of one day lung cancer here in the United States and in the world.
Good Lord willing. Thank you very much for having me, Rory.
Absolutely. Thank you all for tuning in to today's episode. Besides that, you guys have a blessed day. See ya.
Have a good one, guys.